It was a cold, moonless night when Emily found herself driving through an unfamiliar stretch of road. The GPS on her phone had stopped working hours ago, leaving her relying on faintly visible signboards and a growing sense of unease. She'd been warned about taking the back roads, but she was in a hurry, and the highway had been blocked due to an accident. The deeper she drove into the forest, the thicker the fog became, curling around her car like ghostly fingers. Her headlights barely pierced the dense mist, and the trees on either side loomed tall and menacing, their twisted branches reaching toward the sky like skeletal hands. Suddenly, out of the corner of her eye, Emily saw something dart across the road. She slammed on the brakes, her heart pounding in her chest. The car skidded to a stop, and she sat there for a moment, breathing heavily and staring into the fog. It had been too fast for her to make out what it was, but it was big. Summoning her courage, she rolled down her window slightly and called out into the darkness. "Hello? Is anyone there?" The silence that followed was deafening. No rustling leaves, no chirping crickets, just an oppressive, unnatural quiet. She shivered and quickly rolled the window back up. As she was about to put the car in drive, her gaze shifted to the rearview mirror. Her blood ran cold. There, standing a few feet behind her car, was a figure. It was tall and gaunt, its pale skin glowing faintly in the dim light. Its eyes were hollow, black voids that seemed to suck in all the light around them. The figure didn't move, didn't make a sound, but Emily could feel its gaze piercing through her. Panicking, she floored the accelerator, the tires screeching as the car sped off into the fog. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel, and she kept glancing nervously at the rearview mirror, but the figure was gone. She drove for what felt like hours, but the road seemed endless, the trees and fog unchanging. Her fuel gauge was dipping dangerously close to empty, and her phone still showed no signal. Just when she thought she couldn't go on any longer, she saw a faint light in the distance. Relief washed over her as she approached what appeared to be a small, rundown gas station. The neon sign flickered erratically, and the building looked like it hadn't been maintained in decades. But it was her only option. She pulled into the station and stepped out of the car, the cold night air biting at her skin. The place was eerily quiet, and the single pump looked ancient, with rust creeping along its surface. As she approached the door to the gas station, she noticed it was slightly ajar, swinging gently in the breeze. "Hello," she called out, her voice trembling. "I need help. My car's almost out of gas." There was no response. She pushed the door open wider and stepped inside. The interior was dimly lit. A single flickering bulb cast shadows that danced across the walls. The shelves were lined with dusty cans and bottles, and the air smelled of mildew and decay. As she moved further into the store, she heard a faint sound, a soft, rhythmic tapping. It was coming from the back room. Against her better judgment, she followed the sound, her footsteps echoing in the empty space. The door to the back room was slightly ajar, and she pushed it open cautiously. Inside, she saw a small wooden table with a single object on it, a music box. It was old and ornate, its brass surface tarnished with age. The lid was open, and the tiny ballerina inside twirled slowly to a haunting melody. Mesmerized, Emily reached out to touch it, but the moment her fingers brushed against the box, the music stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then, she felt it, a cold breath on the back of her neck. She spun around, but there was no one there. Her heart raced as she backed away, bumping into the table and causing the music box to fall to the floor. The lid slammed shut, and the room plunged into darkness. In the pitch-black silence, she heard a low, guttural growl. It was coming from the corner of the room. Trembling, Emily fumbled for her phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam of light revealed the same figure she'd seen on the road, its hollow eyes staring at her with an intensity that made her knees weak. Before she could react, the figure lunged at her, its bony fingers reaching out. She screamed and stumbled backward, crashing through the door and into the main store. She scrambled to her feet and bolted for the exit, not daring to look back. When she reached her car, she jumped in and locked the doors, her hands shaking as she started the engine. The headlights illuminated the gas station, but the figure was nowhere to be seen. Without wasting another second, she sped off into the night, tears streaming down her face.